All right. Hi, everyone. It's Tiffany, founder and executive director of Crafting Change. And I want to welcome everyone to our very special Wednesday night sip and sew. We're calling it a sip and sew because we are here in the evening. I know for some of you on the East Coast, it's a little later. Look, we got a few of you with your glasses of wine. I have my iced coffee. So I hope you brought your favorite beverage. And tonight, our very own Kathy Lawrence is going to walk us through one of our projects that we've been working on for a while for the Yonkofa project. So this is our backpack project, and we have two patterns that Kathy is going to walk us through tonight. So Kathy is here with her camera. So we've got her hands up here on our screen. And so I'm gonna blow you up here in just a second, Kathy. So the Yonkofa project is very near and dear to our hearts. Sue Wilson brought this project to our attention, and I had a wonderful teleconference with Gabriella, the executive director of the Yonkofa project. And the Yonkofa project builds medical clinics in Georgia out of storage containers, fills them up with supplies, ships them over to Ghana, sets them up, and then trains the personnel there in Ghana locally to staff them. Usually takes an American doctor with them, helps train the local personnel to run them, and then has all the supplies there. And how Crafting Change is helping out is that we are helping to provide backpacks that will be filled with school supplies. And then for the girls, we are helping also to provide menstrual pads because if girls don't have the proper menstrual pads, they miss school. 90% of girls in Ghana, if they do not have the reusable menstrual pads, will simply miss school for that 1 week a month. So we are constructing the menstrual pads as well as the backpacks. And we are also working on reusable cloth gowns, which several people have already made. So we're super excited about this project for the Yonkofa project. And so I've already been receiving backpacks because our first shipment has already come in. And so I have one here that I received from our very own Cindy Bortz. Does this look familiar, Cindy? So thank you, Cindy. This is one that came in. And then this is another one that Cindy sent with the bias tape straps. So Kathy's going to show us how to make this tonight. And I also have on hand a t-shirt here ready to chop up.
Hi, everybody. Hey, thank you for spending your evening with us. Let's see if we can get a little bit of work done tonight, huh? We're going to be showing two different bags tonight. One is going to be a sewn bag with the straps like Tiffany was just showing. And the other one, we're going to upcycle a t-shirt. So I think our goal is somewhere a little bit under 1,000 bags. So we got a lot of work to do, girls. Let's get going, okay? Now, you've all heard about what Yonkofa Project is and what they're doing. And thanks, Tiffany, for doing my intro. That was awesome. Our first bag tonight is going to be the Unlined String Bag. I've got a few examples of them here. The first one is just a simple string bag with the drawstrings on the top. It's got the loop carriers on the side, and this one is done with the clothesline. Okay, the second bag that we've got is the same design, except we finished it off with the bias tape that was just sewn shut and used instead of the clothesline. And our third one is just showing you what you can do if you don't want to use either of those options. Perfectly okay to use your fabric and to make your own tubes, make your own strapping. So I'll go over that. Right now, I just want to go over the main construction of any type of fabric that you use. You have to think about what it's going to be used for. That's true in any type of a project. And so when you're picking out your fabrics for this sewn bag, I want you to remember that we want some type of a cotton woven, a little bit heavier than just a thin cotton. So if anybody's still saving some of that cotton that was just a little bit too heavy for masks, this is a great place to get it out and use it. I don't know if they call it weaver's cloth or lightweight kettle cloth or lightweight duck type of cloth, but anything in that lighter weight range is fine. I want you to please stay away from anything heavy like upholstery, denim, double knits, fleece, anything scratchy, because these kids are going to be carrying these on their heads. Some of them will be carrying them on their backs through the straps. And it's a hot country in Ghana. And I imagine some of those kids not going to have any shirts on. So don't we want anything to scratch them or to be irritating? Okay, this is an easy beginner's project. You can replay this video if you want to see it again, or you can find the video that we recommend if you go to our craftingchange.org/projects and scroll down to the Yonkofa project. There'll be a link there to patterns. Okay, so what you're going to need to sew it is just your fabric. We've got scissors, we've got your something to measure out with, pins, clips, your basic sewing accessories. And for fabric, you're going to need a ½ yard of 44 to 45 inch fabric. And for cording, you're going to need 2 pieces of cording cut 72 to 75 inches each. Here's the cording I'm going to be using tonight. This is the clothesline cording. We'll go over a little bit more about this later on. But for right now, let's look about how we're going to be laying this out, huh? Now you have 45 inch fabric, and I've got a really cool piece, Robert Kaufman, who doesn't love fishies? Fishies in the sea. Okay, if you lay your fabric out with this being the crosswise and this being the lengthwise, this is the 45 inch wide here. And what you're going to be cutting is you're going to be cutting a piece that's the width of the fabric, 15 inches wide here by 38 inches wide here. And this is one I already have cut out. I'm going to lay it on there, and you can see that this matches up to the fold. And this excess here would be cut off here on the side. So I have, once again, 15 by one whole piece of 38. And that's all you do. You don't have to seam it unless you want to, but let's not make this harder than what it is, okay? Now I want to show you something. You see my little fishies, how they're all swimming this way? They're not swimming all over the sea. They're all going this way. So if you are making the most out of your fabric and laying this out crosswise and taking a ½ yard, be careful. Be careful of your one-way patterns, because when this bag gets turned around, you see what happens? Everybody's sideways. So, well, he probably looked normal to you because my camera's sideways, but you understand what I'm trying to get across. So make sure if you have a one-directional pattern that you're okay with that back half of the bag being upside down or the whole thing being sideways. I would recommend if you just stay with an all-over print or an all-over stripe or something that won't get wonky. Okay, now that was a tip alert. Now we got their bag cut out. What we're going to do is you just sew all the way around the outside of it. I've already done it on this piece of fabric to save time. And you're just going to do a zigzag stitch all the way across, all the way around. That just helps to keep it so it's not raveling. I set my zigzag on my machine to a width of about 4 and a length about 2.5. Okay, next thing, I'm going to set this aside and we're going to prepare the loop tabs. When you cut out your 15 by 38, you also cut out 2 pieces that are 3 by 3s, and these are the loop tabs. Okay, now with the right sides together on these, you fold it right sides together and then stitch a 1/4 inch seam on one long side, stitch that closed, and then turn it with either a safety pin or a bodkin or a loop turner. Or if you just want to get in there and use your fingers and turn it around, I can usually manage to wrangle it right side out. So once you have them right side out, you see where the seam is on back. This is a good thing to try to get that worked to right here on the back side so it's not on either end. Okay, finger press it or press it with an iron. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to top stitch it. And I just top stitch all the way around. And then these 2 raw edges here, I zigzag these to keep them from raveling. And we have a loop. Okay, now you ready? Here's your next tip alert. This is going to be the loop that goes on the side of the bag to hold the strings. So what I want you to do is take 2 of your strips of strings and put it in here to give an idea of how much room you're going to need for these to go through. You don't want this sewn up so tight that these can't go through, and you don't want it so loose that it'll just come out at the end, knot and everything. So what I'm going to do is put those in there and get a nice comfortable idea of where that's supposed to be. Just take a pin and you go ahead and you mark it where you want to sew. Or you can take one of your fabric markers or whatever you prefer to use. But we're going to mark this about right there. And that's where I'm going to sew. Next step is to take your bag, fold it in half, get it lined up. Here's the fold down here. All right. Take a pin and mark where that fold is. That's going to be important in the next step. So just mark where that fold is, or if you want to press it, whatever, we need to know where that fold is, because the next thing you're going to do is you're going to open this up, and where this pin is marks the bottom. We're going to take the tab and put it right down there at the bottom. Oh, this is terrible fabric for you to see that, isn't that? Sorry, guys. You're going to take this tab, put it right down to the bottom, and then pin it in place where you're going to be sewing it. So it can be right to the edge, or it can come out a little bit. It depends on wherever your line was that you needed to sew. But this is going to go onto here. Go ahead and pin her down in place, making sure it's right at the crease. I've got one already sewn up over here. Here's where I basted it onto the material. And so after I baste it, I'm going to take the pins out so I don't ruin a second machine this week. And I've got that basted along there. So what you're going to do next is take your fabric, fold it in half again, and just check those tabs, make sure they're right down there at the bottom, and they look good. So go back, open it up, and baste them. Now, I think I made a mistake, but I can easily correct it because I haven't sewn this one yet. But this is a good thing here. Don't get in a hurry and put one on this side of the and one on that side of the crease. They both got to go on this side of the crease. All right, so let me move this one over. In there, we won't have anything wonky. It'll be good. All right, so both tabs are on the same side of the fold. Go ahead and baste them down. Take your pins out, and then get your bag going up here again. Now we should have something that looks like this. I've got this side sewed down. We're going to pretend that this one is for time's sake, okay? Now, next, we're going to mark how far down this top casing goes. And so I like to use my little marker for this. You're going to measure down from the top 4 1/4 inches. And you're going to put a pin in there. And that's going to mark your starting and stopping point for that top. You're not going to stitch the side closed above that. This is where you're going to start. So on both sides, we're going to measure down to 4 1/4. Are you ready for another tip alert? When stitching your side seams, make sure you have the side up that you've basted this tab on, so you can see if you're going to catch that on the stitching line. If you stitched on the other side, you might be off a little bit and it might show funny. So have this side up with that basting, and what you're going to do is you're going to stitch from the top, back stitch, and then forward stitch, so you can lock your stitch, and this make like a 1/2 inch to a 5/8 inch stitch all the way down on both sides. And start and stop right here. You don't want to go up to the top, so leave that top open and stitch both sides. Okay. Now, miracle of magic here. Let's go to the bag I've already prepped. This one has side stitched Start and stopped 4.5 inches from the top. Next, we're going to work on the casings. You know what, guys? We are almost done stitching this bag. That's awesome. Okay, take the bag to where you can see the side seam, and you go ahead and you press this open. Let me see, this side will show up better. You press this under, press the seam open, and then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to stitch down here, across, and then back up to the top. All right, I've already done it on this side, so I'm going to hop over to the machine for just a quick second, and I'm going to stitch here, across, and then back up to this other top. When you get down to the bottom, stop, lift your presser foot, and rotate around, lower your foot, go across the end, stop, rotate. Okay. Now I'm going back over to the overhead. All right. So now we've got this top. Oh, I hate those little threads. I'm a cut as you sew, because that bugs me. I don't know why. We got that open there. Next, let's do the hemming on the top casings. Now, here at the top, we're going to lay the bag with the wrong sides. We're going to fold down. Let's see what I do here. I think the instructions say something different from what I do. The instructions said 1.5 inches at the top, but I kind of did a little bit more. I did actually 2 inches because I wanted to make sure I had enough room for my rope to go through the casing. And I guess I would have if I would have done this smaller. But the point of this story is just to let you know, don't sweat those 1/4 inches. You know, if you've got it just a slightly bigger, that's good. As long as it is functional and your cord still goes through where you want it to go for it. We're not going to think any different of anything slightly off, as long as it's functional. And that's good too, because I feel a little bit slightly off today too. Okay, see there, get him out of there. So what you do is you fold this under, you press it, and then fold it down again. You're just making a simple hem. Mark it with your clips or with your pins, whatever you want. And with this raw edge here turned under, you're going to stitch each side separately for a hem across the top of the casing. Okay. The other side, do the same thing. Fold that under, press it, and then let's clip it. Now, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to try to do it all the way around, because that would defeat the purpose of having these open casings. Okay, so we're going to do one side, stop, and then we're going to do the other side. So here we are on the first side. We're setting the machine at a straight stitch. We're going to start at this end. I'm going to take some stitches. Then I'm going to reverse to lock it in. I'm going to keep going. All right, that's not too bad. There's one side done. And to do the separate side, you do the same thing, but you leave this open here. Don't you sew those two together, or you'll have a mess when you're trying to get your cords in. By the way, I love these little scissors. They are so comfortable on my hands. But oh boy, you know how these things bug me. We gotta get these cut off. Yeah, there we go. Get you going. Take all of our clips out, and we're going to have a ta-da moment. Now here's another tip alert. Here we have at the bottom, remember where our little tabbies were? Look how smooth they come out at the corners. Doing it this way, you don't have to try to poke your corner out to make it sharp. because you can just pull on your little tabs and it comes out to be just a nice smooth bottom and faster, which is, oh, that's wonderful. So here we have our bag. Almost done, guys. Now, some people think the hardest part of this is putting the cording in, but we're going to go slow because I know you guys will catch right onto it. Okay, I've got 2 pieces of cording. Each one is about 72 inches wide. I mean, long. All right. And I folded it in half, and I'm just going to lay it on top to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be taking one and go through that top casing like this and out the side to go through the bottom loop. The other one, it's going to go the opposite way. It's going to come in from this side, and it's going to go around the loop here, and it's going to come out and down the side. So they're going to act against each other and pull and shut the casing. Okay. Now we're going to use two different weapons of choice here to get that cording through. The first one is your trusty old traditional safety pin. So we go down to the bottom and you pull that through the bottom, shut it, and then start from one end, and all you're going to be doing is going through that casing at the top. Now, if any of you gals are old 4-H gals or maybe old brownie girls or high school girls, I fondly remember doing bags like this when I was first sewing in 4-H. And we just thought they were just so snappy, but they weren't backpacks back then because that was just like when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, you know. But it's just so much fun when your project comes together and it just comes out right. So here we go. We got that first one almost through the casing. Okay. Now what we're going to do is lay the bag flat there and try to get it kind of evened up. So you might have to pull on it a little bit so you get these bottoms evened out. So just pull on your top there until you can get them kind of, there we go, kind of all pulling in the right direction and even. So we've got the one side done. We're going to switch and I'll show you how well the bodkin goes. So you don't need any fancy equipment because the safety pin did just fine. But if you want something cool, I love my little bodkins. They got little grippies here. And this will come over the end. You squeeze down and it's got a little ring here that slides down and tightens that out. So now you got a nice big long bodkin to pull that through with. Okay, and so since I went this way, now I got to go the opposite way. So I'll come in here, come around and down. And that's why we don't sew any of this shut. We got to leave room for our cordings to go through. And the bodkin actually, because of the length of it, goes through a lot faster. And here we come down the backside. Okay. Okay. So let's get the second side evened out so we can finish her off. Yep. See, I've got pretty even bottoms. So now the bodkin will go off. And the next thing we need to do, let me get it up. We need to put these cordings through this bottom strap. And since I think I'm so clever, we're going to try to do 2 at once with my bodkin. Oh yeah. All right, there it goes. And we have success. Okay. Let's repeat for the other side. Oh, you guys got a little crooked on me. Okay, we're trying to get this one evened out just a touch here. I suppose I could just stick them through one at a time, but and with shenanigans like this is probably why I'll have this broke by the end of the week. Okay. And that Goes through the bottom one. And that's why I love my bodkin. Last thing, look at there. Come over here at the bottom. We've got it all straightened, so the rope's all laying flat. We're going to come down here and we're going to do an overhand knot. Yeah. So it don't come through the bag. Okay. So once you've got your overhand knot down here, I've got tape on the ends. I'm just going to go ahead and cut them off. They're going to ravel just a little bit, but it's not going to be anything major. And we'll go over cord here in just a minute. So now this guy down here, we'll tie him in a knot. And do the same. Ta-da! Now the test is, yes, we did it. We have it closed at the top. We've got our string here. And to open it, it runs nice and smooth, nice big bag. Ta-da!
Tip I would give just to make it a little bit stronger and more durable is after you measure down 4.5 inches and you have to sew that V seam, I double stitch and back stitch at the bottom of that. I go over it a couple times just to make that point a little stronger.
I see where you're at, Cindy, and that is a very good idea because you know how kids are. They can be a
Right.
little rough. So what she's talking about is here at the top. You see where we stopped our stitching here and then we folded this over and top stitched it. She's talking about this point right here. It's probably not a bad idea to do a couple of stitches over that, is maybe even a bar tack. And that way you're good to go. If they're stressing on it, it won't rip or pop. So thank you. That's a good suggestion, Cindy. I just want to finish out because when I sent out my kits to my gals, I sent out kits that had this clothesline cording and then bias tape and then fabric. And I just want to speak just a little bit about this.
Yeah, I dropped the links to the cording because we have a couple of different options if people are going to tackle this project for what our advisory board that when we put this project together, we really thoroughly researched different cording options to really go over this for you. And of course, the lowest cost option is homemade bias tape. And it doesn't have to be on the bias, just homemade, making homemade straps yourself. That's the lowest cost, basically free option with fabric yourself. So we always want to have a kind of a free option for doing this project.
What I want to do is I want to show you how we came to that decision. So you just don't think we're all goofy. I mean, we are goofy, but here is the paracord. And you would think that this would just be awesome, but looks what happens when you cut it. It does this ravelly thing. It ravels around this cord in the middle. And so in order to make this non-ravelly, I know you can take a cigarette lighter to it or a lighter, just a lighter to it, and it'll seal in that ends. But we were afraid to do that because once these bags leave us and they go to Ghana, we don't have any control if maybe that's going to get picked off or fall off. And then you've got kids with like this hanging off the bottom of their bags and they have no way to secure that again. So, and plus this can be a little rough on the skin. So that's why we didn't choose the paracord. Man, oh man, I wish I could just get this clothesline that's at the dollar store because it would be awesome. But look what happens with this. It does the same thing. See, it's got a cord in the middle. Even though it's woven, it's the right size. It says it's clothesline, yada, yada, yada. It's got this thing in the middle and it's the same thing. If anything happens to however you sealed that bottom, once the bag leaves you, they're just going to have a mess with it. So we weren't real thrilled with this. Some of you might remember the old time clothesline that looks like this too. That's got little almost wires in it. Nasty. Okay. So what we would really like is this. It's called 7/32 diameter. It's braided. It's not twisted, because if it's twisted, it'll come untwisted when they're using the backpack. Kathy Wargo has made lots of backpacks and has said, don't use the twisted because it untwists when you're wearing it. So this is braided. It's all cotton. It doesn't have a core in it, and it's 100% cotton clothesline. Now, I found a couple different places for it at Do It Best hardware store, either online or in the store. They had this.
No, you're good.
Here's your Do It Best 7/32. This has got 200 feet in it, braided clothesline, natural cotton fiber, number 7 size. And this is what I'm using in the demo. So you can get that either in your local Do It Best hardware store or online. The other one that I really like is called this. Oh, it's just a basic household essential clothesline. I first got this at my local Farm and Fleet. I don't know if you guys have Farm and Fleet, or maybe they're called Fleet Farm or something like that, but this really fit the bill and it was a lot less inexpensive. And they called this one 3/16 number 6. So it's just a hair, just a fraction smaller, but it's good. We put the link in that this was also, last I checked, available on Amazon to order, or like I said, if you have a Farm and Fleet. Okay. But I do know that these can get expensive. And so we've got 2 alternatives because we're mindful of things having some cost here. Now, the one thing that I've done that I really like, okay, you guys are all good cap makers or scrub caps. Who's got like a bunch of this left over at home, right? I thought this was just awesome. This is the brand that a lot of us use. We're really thrilled with it. See if we get a good shot there. It's called Mandala Crafts Double Fold Bias Tape. It's made out of polyester. And this is 55 yards in this spool. And this is orderable at Amazon from a lot of different colors. And Tiffany threw the link in the chat so you can see it. But some bias tapes really stretch, but this polyester was really pretty sturdy. So I was real happy with this. Just take it, stitch it shut. Okay, if you want to be fancy, yep, we can be fancy. We can turn the ends in and then stitch it shut. I would use a little bit of a zigzag, so avoid any chance of that popping, but take this, zigzag it shut, use this instead of the clothesline. It works just as well, especially if you're using a little bit lighter weight fabric. So we like this real well. Third, very inexpensive. Just cut a 2-inch wide piece of fabric. Thank you, Melanie. Beautiful. And that you can find that in Melanie's store. Take a 2-inch wide piece of fabric by the length that you need, and you can sew a tube and turn it. Now, everybody's groaning, oh, that's a really hard thing. On here, you can either use a loop turner that's got the little flippy loop here on the end, stick that in, turn it around, or Kathy Wargo has on our Pinterest channel a video she did on how to make the loops the easy way. And so what she did is I'm taking this 2-inch wide piece of fabric, and this is just a turning cord. This is just my helper. This isn't going to stay in there. That just lays down about in the middle. We fold this over, and then you stitch this along the edge all the way down. And then when you're done, you just take this inside cord and pull it, and it'll pull itself right side out. And so then after it's done pulling itself right side out, you just clip that as close as you can and then go on and make your next one. But this is a really neat method. Make sure to look for that link to watch Kathy Wargo's video. That's really cool. So we got tricks up our sleeves. Hi, everybody. We're back for part 2 of our Yonkofa backpacks. This one is an upcycled t-shirt backpack, and this is geared for the younger kids. They're going to be carrying school supplies in them, but as I understand it, the notebooks and such are going to be smaller. So this is my example of one that I did. Here, you can see it's a little bit not as long, not as wide, because these are for your public grade school aged kids. They still have got the straps, but this time the straps are sewn in the side, and they still have the casing at the top that opens and closes like the last one did. Okay, so we're going to talk just real briefly to begin with about the types of t-shirts you should be looking for. Rummage sailing, going to thrift stores, going to your church thrift store, go shopping in your own closet. There's just a few guidelines that I want to clue you in on, okay? Let's take a look at this one first. I was so excited because I really wanted to do a cat bag. Isn't that cute? I just wanted to do that so bad. And as you can see, the stitching along here is quite permanent, but then I realized the problem I have are these little spangly danglies. They come off, they can be picked off. And unless I'm going to pick all of these off before it goes out the door, I'm not going to use this one because I don't want any of the kids to pick these off. So if you've got anything that's got sequins or little glued on things like this, just pass on it. All right, now this one, it's a heavier t-shirt, and I just thought, oh my gosh, is that cute? Because it's got the kitties and the cuddle and the dog on it. But you're going to have a problem with this, and let me show you where. You see up here, this is a raglan sleeve, and see how that cuts up into the neck, this raglan sleeve. When you go to cut this out, here's my template. You're going to come into these raglan points, and that's going to end up at the top of the bag at your drawstring casing, and that's going to cause you trouble. It's going to be thick and it's going to be hard to pull a drawstring through. So unfortunately, I think we're going to have to take a hard pass on this one too. And while you're looking, you know what? I didn't find a whole lot of neat men's stuff because, you know, so much of it had beer logos or events that nobody had ever heard of. And I just thought, it's not real appropriate. And so I was excited about this because who doesn't like stripes, right? But I'm kind of on the fence about this one too, because this is a real lightweight. And I'm afraid that all that work that goes into it, with it being lightweight like this, it's going to sag out and not be durable enough. So I think I'm going to have to pass on this too. Well, I didn't have really good luck shopping, did I? Well, look at this guy. Isn't he cute? This is going to make a real cute one. And I've got enough room. Make yourself a template. Put it down. Yeah, I got enough room on this guy, except I'm not going to have enough for straps cut out of here or the sleeve. I could probably piece, but you know what I'm going to do with this one. There's this thing called t-shirt yarn. And it comes in skeins. This one happens to be the Fox Yarn Company. I got this on Amazon. I'm sure our yarn ladies can tell us where the best deals are for these. And what this is, it's a continuous t-shirt strip, and it's cut, and it just naturally curls up. And so when I make this t-shirt that is the kids paisley tie-dyed, if I don't have enough to cut my straps out of the bottom or the sleeve, I'm going to use this t-shirt yarn.
T-shirt yarn on its own won't be stable enough for straps. We suggest to either reinforce it by zigzagging a narrow strip of bias tape inside or braiding 3 lengths together.
One more and then we'll get to our chopping. Okay, this is a really nice t-shirt, except you can kind of see where it's thicker and it's ribbed. And this I think would still work, but I think what I would recommend is to use a different type of a strap. But this is nice and sturdy. And the idea on this project is I know you can take a piece of fabric out of your dash or your oopsies, and you can cut it up and you can make this bag. But part of the idea on this project is that we're taking upcycling, something that might have the chance of just being thrown away, but we're going to give it a second life and give it a little love and give it another life. So that's the idea of this, is upcycling. Okay, well, this is like Goldilocks, right? One's too big, one's too small, and then there's one that's just right. What's the porridge is too hot, too cold. I've mangled this one up a little bit so I can sew in advance here, so it doesn't take me so long. But this was a really cool man's t-shirt. This is the size large. It had long sleeves and it had enough room up here in the body for me. And so this is what I am going to use. Now let me show you real quick of what the game plan is or was. Obviously the black is my t-shirt. And when you plan out something like this, what you're looking for in the t-shirt is to have enough room to cut out a square. I'm using 14 by 14 for the little kid bags. But if you think those look a little bit too small to you, that's cool. Maybe do them 14 by 15 or 14 wide by 16 long, because there's a lot of kids there. And it's like the hats that we sew for Hopa. If you sew it or if you make it, there's probably going to be a kid that fits it. Okay, so we're not married into this 14 by 14, but I think the width is fine. If you just want to make it a little bit longer, I'm good with that. But when you're planning, then plan to have this 14 by 14 cut out here, where basically we're going to cut the sleeves off because we don't need them. And then we're going to try to cut our strips out of the bottom that we are going to use for the t-shirt ties. That way we can use all of the t-shirt. The arms are going to be cat scraps. We throw them off and put them on the floor so the cat has something to play with. She's so bossy. She needs her own stuff when I'm sewing. So when you're looking, do I have enough room? Look at the bottom and take your tape measure out and start measuring and see, we're going to need a total of 120 inches to make the straps. Okay. Now let's get cutting. All right, I already chopped his arm off, but let's come around here. Get your scissors and just, oh, close your eyes and just snip. Okay. And once it's done, it's done. You don't worry, because now we're just going to cut the rest of them up. I just think it's easier if you take the sleeves off. And I have one of them open because I wanted to show you something. So now both sleeves off. That's a cat scrap. There we go. And this is one of the other sleeves that I opened all the way up. But look how cool this is. I think you guys, you can think of something to do with this. I wonder if we could sew some kind of a something. But anyway, the point is we're recycling. Don't throw all of it away. This would make something cool. I'm not sure what, but I'm sure you guys can put your thinking caps on and figure it out for me. Now, down at the bottom, to save time, I've already cut the straps that I'm going to use, but I'm going to show you how to cut them off. Okay. I saved time and I did them earlier today. But what you want to do is to get this bottom all nice and evened out. And for those of you that are using a rotary cutter and a cutting board, what I'm doing is I'm lining this up. You see, your cutting board has regular 1-inch marks on it. The bottom is lined up on a 1-inch line. I take my ruler and I line it up on the next 1-inch line. And I'm going to cut me, I say, a generous 1 inch, about 1 inch and a pinch. Okay, this works easier if you have a rotary cutter. Just put her down, cut your strips, and then just keep cutting until you get the measurements that you want. Tip alert, cardboard template. Make it to the size of what you want. 14 by 14, 14 by 15, 14 by 16. It'll really help you gauge where you're headed. Now, to make this easier to cut the body out, I'm going to cut one side open there, and I'm going to cut it open at this top. Got it all opened up. Let's open up this one too, so you don't bind me up here. All right. Oh, isn't that pretty? What are we thinking? I'm thinking that's just about as good as what I'm going to get that centered. So if you want to, you can mark it with a marker and use your scissors. But I'm going to see how much trouble I get into if I take a rotary cutter. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it out on all four sides, trying not to cut through the cardboard. All right, there's a cat scrap. Oh, there we go. Get another one. There we go. And I technically should have probably one of them kryptonite gloves on so I don't cut myself, but okay, pretend I do. So here's one of them. It's either going to be front or back, whatever I figure out that I want. Now we're going to do the same thing and get our second piece. And this one's coming out of the back. Okay. Now, if I was smart, I'd line this up so my seams are kind of matchy. If I'm smart. Okay. I think I'm about there. That looks good, so I'm going to let this rip. What I would recommend, here's a tip alert. Avoid using the hem on the bottom of your t-shirt. Number one, you're not going to have enough hem to do both straps. So you're going to have one thick and one thin, and that's going to be a little wonky. So unless you get into real trouble and you want to try to pick that apart and use it, fine, but I would avoid the hem. The next thing I want to show, now when you cut that off, you're going to have a little roundy piece like this, and you're going to need to seam these. Now this is where it gets just a little bit tricky, but I got another tip alert. I want you to cut any of these seams off that you have, and we're going to reseam them at a right angle. Because if you leave these thick like they are and then fold them and sew them, you got a big lump. And so when that's being pulled through the bag, it's going to catch on things and it's just going to be lumpy. This isn't as hard as it seems, so just take a deep breath here. Now to seam these at the right angles, you've got two pieces. Both of these have the right sides up, and you're going to take one and put it at a 45-degree angle to the other one, and you're going to give yourself a nice match. See how they're like in a, right there, kind of matched up. And then what I do is I just pin from the point down to the bottom. And this is where I'm going to sew across here. If you're not sure how your sewing is going to come out, then pin it as a test to see, well, okay, if I sewed here, or if I sewed here, if you're not sure, pin this here. Let me see if I was to sew here. No, that's not the right direction. So here's your other test. I'm going to sew it this direction. And then when it's done, it's going to come out to be seamed. So once again, it's a 45-degree angle. Here's your 45-degree angle. And where you're going to sew is you're going to sew from here to here. And you're catching the intersecting points. If you sew further up here, it's not going to come out right. So you want to go to the connecting points where they intersect. And after you do it a couple times, you'll get it. And then that makes the seam like here. And when you've got it sewn across here, you can cut this off. And this is knit, so make sure your sewing machine has a ballpoint needle in it. Ballpoint, I'm using it about a 14 I probably could jump down and use an 11, but there's some places where there's going to be a couple thicknesses to go through. So make sure you have a ball. Take your pin out so you don't wreck your machine. Okay, you sewed that from the intersecting point to the intersecting point, and oh, isn't she beautiful? Now go ahead, trim this down. That's what I love about t-shirt knits. They don't need to have much finished on them because they won't ravel. And there's your seam. That's how you should be seaming these pieces together. Because when you fold this over to stitch it together to make the strap, now when you're sewing, you run first over this seam, and then you run over that second seam. You're not sewing through all of them at once, and you're eliminating that big bulk. So that's what I want you to try to do, because that'll make your ties a whole lot better, okay? I've already done these, and what I want to show you is a tip alert. If your fabric is stretchy and you were just to sew it like this, it curls. Don't do that, okay? Because then you'll get that really curly and hard to get it out to work with. And if you just stitch these together like this, your straps are going to be, excuse me, just really stretchy. So what I'd like you to do, this is the you know what alert. This is just a piece of a bias tape that I cut it in half. It was the double fold left over from the caps, and I just took it and I cut it right down the middle, and I got myself a little piece and used it like a stabilizer. Now you can buy things like twill tape, but they're a lot wider. I'm not sure if that will fit in here. It says a 1/2 inch, but boy, that's cutting it real close. So I don't know if your twill tape's going to work. And they have hem tape, the same thing. It's really kind of wide. So just go back to your good old bias tape that you've used on the caps and cut it in half. Lay it in there. Fold that over so it's sandwiched in the middle, and then just zigzag the outside. Now this is different from the video, but I found that it's a lot more secure of a strap and a little bit beefier, and I just felt more confident putting that in a bag than just 2 layers of this stitched together.
To help stabilize stretchy t-shirt knits and control the curling, put non-woven iron-on interfacing on the wrong side of the knit shirt before cutting out the strips.
Now I've got my straps all sewn. We're going to go ahead and set those aside, and let's go back to our bag. And now I'm going to be in a quandary. Do I want this to be the top, or do I want this to be the top? Okay, the answer to that is check your stretchy. If you got stretchy, that should probably go the width of your bag. Doesn't have to. And this is stretchy. This is kind of stretchy. My piece is kind of the same no matter what. But if you have something that's really a stretchy fabric, you'd want to make it to where if you pulled it on like this, top, bottom, that's the most stable, and keep your stretchy to the width. That way, when they put their things inside the bag, it's not going to sag out. So I'm pretty good either way. And even though this was the top of the shirt, I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to have this be the bottom and this be the top. The next thing I want you to do is line up your tops and your bottoms. And you can usually tell the right side from the wrong side. And hey, if you like the wrong sides better, then use those as the outsides. Just be consistent. So we're going to match up our tops and our bottoms. And get that matched up. Now this is going to be a little bit different from the video too, but after, as with anything, if you make it enough times, you kind of come up with shortcuts and the different ways to do it. Now, here's your top of the bag. Here's the bottom of the bag. And I want you to measure up 2 inches from both the top and the bottom. And I'm just going to stick a pin in the top so I remember. Measure up 2 inches from the bottom on both sides. Mark it. This is going to be an opening for when we're done running the straps through, we can stick them in here and finish sewing the bottom. Okay, so leave this open here and here. And at the top, I want you to measure down 2 inches from the top also. Mark that. And the top, this is going to be saved for the casing. Okay, now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to use a narrow zigzag. I'm not going to use a straight stitch, but I'm going to set it on narrow zigzag about 2.5 length. But the width on that may be about a 2 to a 3. And I'm going to stitch from here to here, in the same way on this side, from here to here. So I'm going to the machine now. And that seam allowance that you want is about a 1/2 to a 5/8 inch width. Here's one side. Okay, I'm going to move this in so I still know what is the top. But maybe I can show you here. Remember what we did on that other bag? And we have this side seam here for the top. We're going to finger press this open and press each side of this open. And I'm just going to do it with my fingers. And I'm going to put a clip up there. And this is where we're going to stitch down the seam allowance across the bottom and then back up the top. And this time I'm going to take Cindy's advice and I'm going to reinforce it down there at the bottom. So before I get started, I'll turn this around and show you. Okay, can you see this one? So now I think I'm going to leave it on zigzag. I just kind of feel like it. And I'm going to stitch down, across, then back up. All right, across, back, across. And if I was doing bags, I'd probably try to find matching thread, but since I'm trying to get better at showing you what I'm doing, I've done this in white. So you can see how this has been stitched down, across the bottom, back up. This is going to be my top casing where the ties go through. And so we've got one more side to do. Let's see how. And oh, I hate those threads, get those threads out of there. And so now we've got both sides done. So here's my little bag. I've got the tops sewn. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to fold down this top to make a casing. And the instructions, I think, say like 1.25 inches. But then again, I'm just going to kind of wing it because I want to be able to have both of my cordings go through. So here's that laying down. We don't want to get this all done and not have our stuff be able to fit in it. And so here's the 2 cordings. I'm going to fold those over there. And I'm going to say, yeah, I got room. I think I'm going to do them about right here. That is another tip alert. Test your cordings on your casing. Don't make them too small. So how much did that actually come out to be? That actually turned out to be 1 inch. And I could probably give it just a little bit more room. No, I shouldn't because there's not there. Okay, inch is cool. Now here's going to be my hard part, huh? Is stitching this up here. Measure it out. Make sure I've got about the same all the way. Well, if it wasn't for the idea of I'm trying to save a t-shirt and recycle it, sometimes the t-shirts can get a little bit frustrating to work with, but just think about giving it a new home, giving it new life, and having something cute, something functional out of what might have maybe just gone into the landfill. Now let's get that other folded down. We're kind of matching it here, just to make that casing about the same as the other. I'm going uphill just a tad up here. So we're gonna wing it right here. There we go, that's better. Now, the thing about this knit is it's not going to fray or ravel, so I don't need to do that turn under like we did on the other piece. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to stitch this down, and I'm going to make sure I have the majority of my stitch on top of this flap, but letting it come off just a little bit. And I'm going to use about a number 4 width and about a 2.5 inch length. And once again, make sure that you've got your ballpoint needles in there. I'm working on a Singer now, so I have Singer needles. You check with your manufacturer to see what's best, but I've got the ballpoint that they recommend for knits in here, size 14. So I'm going to stitch this top. We're going over to the machine again, and what we're doing is doing a zigzag, going half, well, more than half onto the material. And onto the other side. This actually goes pretty quick, so you don't have to do that double turn for a hem. See how I've sewn across this top? I left it open to get our little loops in and just stitched it zigzagged across the bottom. I'm going to turn the bag right side out and we're going to put those straps in there. And I'm going to go straight for my bodkin. Okay, so take one of your straps, put it in the bodkin, squeeze that little circle down. Wait, get them centered in there. We'll see if we can make a go out of that. And this is just like your other bag. Okay, you're going to start in one side and make them go around. And then when you come out, kind of straighten it up. You don't want a whole lot of rolls or wrinkles in there. And then push them through to the other side. Okay, and we're going to try to even out these ends here. We've got the strap through the top, and we've got enough of this to come down here, enough to get sewn in. So I'm going to probably end up just cutting this off. So I'm good. Let's go see, maybe I cut the other one too short, huh? Okay, get my bodkin in, squeeze him down. And now this one comes in this side, around and out. And that's the only trick about these guys. And it's not really a trick. You just got to stop and think. You can't have both of them going in the same edge. That wouldn't make any sense. So you got to have them coming on separate sides. So here's them coming around here. Yeah, I cut them both too long, but that's okay. It's better than being too short, huh? So here's our bag. Let me turn it this way. Here's our top casing. We've got these straps coming out. on both sides, relax them down to the side. And what I'm going to do is make them just a little bit relaxed and figure out a good cutting point. There's really not a hard and fast science on this, because when the child wears it, this is going to be pulled shut. And so you'll have a lot more cording left for them to put around their arms. So now we're just getting an idea here of where we're going to sew this in. And so I'm going to close my eyes and do that. Okay, so let me get about the same down here. There we go. We got one last step, and that's to turn it to the wrong side out again. We're going to straighten these out. Why don't I put a little clip in here? Because we don't want these all twisty. And then on the inside of our bag, remember we left this open down here? We want these ties to come from the bottom. And I'm sorry you're not going to be able to see that, but what I'm doing is feeling with my fingers to make sure I don't have it twisted a bunch of times. And so now I'm trying to find a good position to put these ties in that I can sew them into the seam. I prefer, okay, here's another tip alert. Some people sew them in at the corner. Some people sew them in at the bottom. I kind of like them here on the side, just because I think it's just a better fitting type of a bag. So I'm going to come up. So when I sew this bottom seam, I don't sew into this. So I'm going to come up about here. That's a seam is about a width of a thumb in it. And clip that there. Shut that over like that and clip that. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to grab those, smooth them out, bring them down to the bottom, and give myself the same. Oh, I think it's about a seam's width. So we're going to put them there. Flip this over there. And now I've got one seam left to sew. We're going to start here. We're going to zigzag over those straps, probably come back and forward again to tack them down. Then we're going to go across the bottom. Then we're going to go up and back over this straps. And then we're going to be done. Set your machine back to the narrow zigzag, average length on the zigzag. Now, when I'm sewing this bottom seam here, I'm making sure that I'm not sewing into the straps. I'm sewing next to them as I sew the bottom shut. Okay, turn my corner and just about there to make sure that I've got a reinforced place. Turn the bag right side out. And look at, we got corners, we've got straps. I think it's perfectly fine to G-gel them and try not to put them on top of each other. It doesn't make it so thick. That one they kind of got both in the same way, but it's okay. Drum roll. Ta-da! There is your upcycled t-shirt backpack. And thank you guys so much for spending your evening with me. I hope you are encouraged to get out and make a few of these. They're really simple. And we need about 950 of them. So, hey, if you're off a quarter of an inch here and there, I don't think anybody's going to be picky.
I want to thank Kathy Lawrence. This was an amazing class. So this was super. You are a natural teacher. You just amazing. So huge round of applause to Kathy. This was really informative. Thank Kathy for the time you put into researching this for us, the time and thought you put into these patterns. And we have a FAQ Kathy put together for us for the Unlined Backpack just really well thought out, that goes along with the YouTube video that already exists for this. I just want to thank Kathy and thank everybody for watching.